they hunted and what they did are going to be similar. One difference is going to be Tallahassee is not by the ocean, very close. You can't walk there from Tallahassee in a day. So to get food, the guys here had the ocean, and they could walk out there at low tide and get oysters. How many of you guys like oysters? They could get clams, they could get scallops, abalone, conch, whelk. And so the one thing about shellfish is they don't move very fast, so it makes them easy to catch. Fish, you have to be a little quicker, and so they would use nets. For the big fish like sharks, they would also use hooks. They would put bait on. This is a copy of one of the hooks that we have found in the area. Hold all your questions till the end, please. The alligator that you see here, these guys did eat alligator. We find the teeth, just like shark's teeth, in and around their cooking fires. Now, their cooking fire would have been a lot bigger, meaning longer than this one. This is about how wide they were, but they were really long so that a lot of families could cook their food at the same time or smoke their food. They didn't have refrigerators. And so for them to eat this food, which was mostly animal protein, they would either have to cook it and eat it on that day or smoke it. But the shellfish, you can't smoke, you have to eat it on the day. So kids your age that lived here, every day that the weather permitted, you guys would go out at low tide and you would look for oysters and clams. Now, the way that they ate the clams and the oysters is they would bring them and they would put them on the barbacoa. What does that sound like, that word?
Barbecue.
Barbecue, yes ma'am. And once the shells heated up from the coals, it wasn't a fire, so the wood wasn't catching on fire, but the clams and the oysters would open up a little bit. Peacock agrees with me. The clams and the oysters would, the liquid on the inside would begin to steam, and so their mouths would open. And once that happened, then they could stick in a piece of wood or their own fingers and pull it apart and eat the animal. And after that, what do you do with the shells? They throw them into a big pile called a midden. And that way they weren't walking on oyster shells everywhere they went. And those middens are how we find the settlements, because these things are still around. They last forever. You guys ever thrown a banana in the backyard, or if you throw a banana in the backyard, you come back in a week, what does it look like?
Ooh, and compost.
Compost. Well, yes, because that's what it's doing. It's decomposing. Oyster shells decompose at a bizarrely slow rate. They last forever. We have dug up oyster shells here on the property that are 4,000 years old, and the city archaeologist handed one to me. He said the last person to touch this was 4,000 years ago, and literally it looked just as good as that one. So they decompose very, very slowly. But we can use these to mark how old the settlement is, and that's how we know that the settlement here that we call Saloy is very, very old, thousands of years old. And it wasn't until around 1200 AD that they started living here full time, but if there was a bad storm, they'd still move inland. But those were what the houses looked like. That dwelling would hold one family. You and your brothers and sisters would live in there with your mom and your dad. And if your mom was the oldest sister in her family, then her mother, your grandmother, and her husband, your grandfather, would also live in there with you. In fact, the village was in the shape of a big circle. About 40 structures. They weren't very far apart from one another, maybe 20, 30 feet. Two houses would share a hutch to hold grain. And all of the women in the village, all of the women and the children in the village were related. Brothers and sisters, cousins. The women were either sisters, cousins. their aunts related to every single other woman in the village. None of the adult men were born here. They all came from somewhere else to be the husbands, and it was all arranged by the women's council here and whatever village the other guy came from. And they would have worked on who was going to marry who for years before they decided who was going to marry who. The young man had to prove himself as a warrior. He proved himself as a warrior very near the village where he grew up. When the boys turned 13, they're yanked out of their home in the middle of the night. They never see their mom again, and they go and live with the bachelor impy, and they're raised by their older cousins and their uncles until they fought a few wars and they've done enough hunting with just the bachelors that the women decide that they can get married. This is called a matrilineal system because all of the clans were determined by who your mother was, not by who your father was. So if you were Timucua, everybody had their mom's last name, not their dad's last name. Everybody. And that's just how they did things. It would have made a balance of power. So the society, that part of it is different than what we kind of grow up with, most of us. But there's still a lot of matrilineal societies all over the planet. Most Native American societies are still matrilineal. The men might be the chiefs sometimes. The men are the ones that go to war most of the time. But the families are tracked and traced through history through the line of the mother, not the father. So, date alligators. We've got alligators all over St. Johns County. Do you guys have any alligators in Leon County? You ever seen one? You have? Okay. I did see one in a lake just outside of Tallahassee. So I know they're up there. We've got a bunch down here. We see them all over the place. So this tool that I'm holding in my hand, so you guys are from Tallahassee. How many of you have ever been to or heard of Wakulla Springs? It's not far from Tallahassee. Yeah. So a bunch of years ago, they pulled out the bones of a big woolly mammoth. That woolly mammoth is in the entrance to the Florida Museum of Natural History in Gainesville. How many of you have been to that one? A couple of you? All right, if you guys all went, it'd be really, really cool. The Museum in Tallahassee is cool, but the one in Gainesville is cool too. So atlatls have a point that's smaller than a spear point, but bigger than an arrow point. And so the points that they found in the spine of that woolly mammoth lets us know, two things let us know that they were hunting with an atlatl. One, the size of the stone point, and number two, it came down at a high angle into the back of the animal. Now the way the atlatl works is you don't throw it straight because it's not very accurate and it's not very fast. And it takes a while for this thing to stop wobbling. So if I were to throw it at that tree, I might hit it, I might not. But that big circle out there, all the way from here, if the wind was with me, I'd be able to chuck it out there and make it into that circle. And it's not even that hard. Have you guys ever seen those plastic sticks that have the cup in it? You put the tennis ball in and you throw it so your dog can catch it? How many of you have seen that? That's exactly what this does. All right, we got some birds back there, so. But it throws pretty simply, pretty easily. So you do that, except really hard and a lot further. The atlatl was replaced by the bow and arrow, which I have one. Now, when the Native Americans first got to Florida, they didn't have the bow and arrow. Bow and arrow technology was brought by the ancestors of modern-day Eskimos. But this changed everything. This was faster and more accurate. And because of that, they could start hunting an animal that is all over Florida, but it was too fast to chase, it was too fast to throw an atlatl at, and it was definitely too fast to chase down with a spear, even with dogs. Well, when they got the bow and arrow, they can start hunting it. You guys have any guesses what that animal might be?
Squirrel?
Nope. 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 Deer. The deer. Fast. And there's a lot of them. Alligators are a lot of things, but they're not fast. There's a lot of squirrels, but if you're a squirrel hunter, you already know that they're not worth, the meat's not worth it. You got to be real hungry to go squirrel hunting, and you need a lot of squirrel. So it usually takes about 12 guys to come up with enough squirrels for a good stew. So make sure you bring potatoes. I'm going to step over here. If you guys want to step over here, you can too.
Be careful of the stuff in the middle. Watch where you are walking. Watch where you're walking. Do not touch the stuff. Put your phone down while you walk.
And then nobody get in front of me.
That side of the line, guys. That side of the line. I have to have all of you that side of the line, including you.
Oh, what?
Y'all gotta get it.
Get on that side of the line.
There's no line here.
The arrow's a lot faster than the atlatl. It's a lot more accurate. And this allowed them to start hunting deer, an animal that they had never been able to successfully hunt before. And once they start using the bow and arrow, we see a whole lot of deer bones and deer parts and deer skins being used for tools and clothing in the excavations of their campsites. So, do you guys have a question for me that maybe you think they would want to know the answer to that I haven't talked about? Nope. All right. I don't know how much time you have, but the animal skins are real, all of them. I don't want you to pick them up, but you can touch them, okay? And you can go and look in some of the buildings, and then when your leader says it's time to go, it's time to go. Thank you guys, you've been awesome.
What is this? Looks like a frog. Now we have a wolf. Excuse me? Is that a wolf? Yeah, that's a flat wolf. I think this is a fox. This is a fox. Don't pick it up. Don't pick it up. Bro, what? Y'all need to move. Ew. And this crab. Mama, let's go. Ew. Oh, no. I'm so not freaking out. Bro, this is gonna bite you. I'll FaceTime you. Hold up. I'm gonna FaceTime you. There's a peacock right there. Let me see it. Excuse me. I thought you said don't pick it up. Don't pick it up. Just leave it. Stop pushing. Then you need to move. You can be on the side. I can. A beaver. Johnny, move it. Excuse me. Can you? I'm going inside. This feels so. That feels hard more than soft. It feels a little. It's shedding. Ew. I'll take a photo for you. Thanks. Of this? I'm not gonna take a photo of everything. Alligator skin, bro. Alligator skin. Let it live. Ew, alligator skin. Get out of my skin. I'm not gonna touch that. Bro, I'm not gonna touch it. Now you're trying to act like a furry. Shut up, you are a furry. I'm only taking, but I'm not touching that thing because that is technically fish.
Welcome back to my house.
No flag. Let me look over here. It smells disgusting over here. It smells disgusting over here.
It smells.